I go, here I go. Yeah, here I go, here I go.
Welcome in, everyone, to yet another episode of The Take with your host, Jackson Burlison, of course. And in this episode, we have a lot of news to start off this one, and we also have a ton of stuff to get into that happened this past weekend. So before we get into this episode, make sure to subscribe, you guys. Hit that notification bell. Comment your thoughts on this entire episode. We're going to be dropping more Tuesdays and Thursdays, guys, so keep an eye on episodes on those 2 days. Short video content is going to be coming out. You'll have everything you need to stay updated in the sports world on The Take with Jackson Burlison. Now let's go ahead and get into this story that we've been following for the past couple of weeks now. Brendan Sorsby, obviously, we know that he was ruled eligible to play after gambling on his own team. A judge in Lubbock, he approved a temporary injunction. Now, that doesn't matter because last night, Brendan Sorsby, he plans to enter the NFL Supplemental Draft. Now, this happened just a few hours right after the Big 12 announced that they're going to be taking a strong stand against Texas Tech quarterback Brendan Sorsby playing amid his admitted sports betting violations. So before we get into Sorsby and his NFL supplemental draft process, I just want to kind of talk about, what this Big 12 lawsuit means against Texas Tech. It's the Big 12 suing Texas Tech. They don't want Sorsby to play. But now that Sorsby is going to the NFL supplemental draft, that makes things a lot different because if he gets picked up by a team, there's really no way to punish this guy, even suspending him. You can't do that because he's not on the team anymore. So I think from what I've been hearing and from what I've been kind of just trying to figure out from Red Raider Nation and Texas Tech and all that, it seems like this was a smart, you still got the supplemental draft to your disposal. You can go ahead and use that, Brendan. Texas Tech, we still have a quarterback. We have Will Hammond. He's going to come back. He's going to be stronger. We'll be fine. I think that's kind of what they're looking at with this right now because there's no need to risk an entire program for one player who's only going to be there for 1 year. And I'm not saying that this is exactly what Tech is doing, but it could be in the deciding process of hey, how do we try to save our program? And that's what's happening because the Big 12's coming at them. You got all these other conferences boycotting to not schedule Texas Tech. And then there's postseason bans being in question. Will Texas Tech be able to play in the Big 12 title game if Brendan Sorsby's on the roster? Now it's looking like Brendan Sorsby will not be on the roster and that he's going to go to the NFL. So it kind of takes away that element of it. But also, with Sorsby not playing now, how is college athletics going to handle this situation moving forward? Because obviously there's nothing that you need to do when it comes to ruling him out or anything like that. Because if he enters the supplemental draft in the NFL, he's probably most likely going to go to the NFL. He's probably not going to come back to college. But these rules have changed so much. College athletes now won't lose their amateur status for going to the NFL. They're still technically considered a pro athlete at the college level. So there's a lot of different rules for this. Obviously, if he gets picked up by a team and he stays on a team, he's not going to go back to Tech, obviously. But, the NFL has had a history of accepting guys that have gambled. Keyshawn Boutte was one of those guys. There's been a few names that have gambled in college and still been able to play in the NFL. So I don't think it impacts Sorsby's NFL eligibility as much. If he does it in the NFL, obviously that's a whole different story. But it's a separate entity than the NCAA. It may be something teams look at, but also if you're interviewing a guy to bring in for training camp or whatnot, you're looking for a guy who's going to come in there and work hard, have a great attitude. And it seems like from what Sorsby's been telling the judges that he's trying to move on. He's trying to get better. He's trying to improve as a person, which I do like that he's trying to do. And I think it's honestly mature for him to, to kind of see the situation that he has in front of him. Hey, it might be kind of hard to play college football, but the NFL is still around. He's still a good enough player. He has good enough tape. He had good enough stats to maybe make an NFL push. But the lawsuit, the Big 12 they filed, was basically, they filed it on Monday. So they want court confirmation that their bylaws allow them to sanction Texas Tech, including potentially barring Sorsby or the program from championship contention if the school fields him. That's what I was kind of mentioning about. And then this is a direct response to Texas AG Kenneth Paxton's warning last week that any sanctions would be unlawful. And then Sorsby, again, he admitted to thousands of times, including betting 40 times. He bet thousands of times, including 40 bets on his own team in Indiana. We kind of talked about that. The judge granted his temporary injunction on June 8th, clearing him to play for Texas Tech in 2026. And then Big 12 presidents, they met with no final decision yet, but the league's board statement they released, they said, universities should not field players who have bet on their own team multiple times. Like, I agree with that. And then multiple Big 12 ADs said they're reportedly disgusted, disheartened. The suit notes widespread industry opposition, including Georgia and Nebraska, refusing to play Texas Tech if Sorsby suits up. Sorsby has until June 22nd to declare for the supplemental draft, which he already has intended to do so. And now the situation remains fluid with the legal battles ongoing. And then when it kind of comes to the supplemental draft part of it, I mean, it just makes things hard. Now, the NFL hasn't had a supplemental draft since 2023, and no one's been selected in one since 2019 when the Cardinals picked safety Jalen Thompson with a fifth-round bid. Now, the last quarterback to enter the supplemental draft was Terrell Pryor, who was a third-round bid in 2011 for the Raiders. Now, the draft itself will take place sometime later this summer. There are obviously, a lot of questions to be answered. How do we get here? What's Sorsby's value? What are teams that can maybe pick him up? And then I kind of mentioned, how does the NFL approach NCAA players with gambling violations? I mentioned Keyshawn Booty, quarterback Hunter Deckers, and we're both found with gambling violations while playing in college, and both were allowed to pursue NFL careers. Deckers was projected as the starting quarterback at Iowa State, but was ruled ineligible ahead of the 2023 season after investigation found he had bet on at least one game involving the Cyclones. At least one game, and this dude was not even allowed to play in 2023. That's the thing that look, here's the thing. I think what you're seeing happen is that, Texas Tech, they were just following the rule of the court. They're like, all right, yeah, Sorsby can play. Everybody else is like, no, he clearly broke a rule. He should not be allowed to play. And then Sorsby's like, okay, I'll try this out. And then I think he quickly realized that a future in college football is kind of gone, because I think he realized that this is probably not the best move for me right now. It's creating maybe a lot of distractions for him, and it's creating a lot of issues. So I think, he's probably better off, going to the supplemental draft and seeing what he can do in there. But, I mean, obviously college athletics has to change something with this. It has to be different. We've said it many times on this show already about this specific topic. But, Sorsby, he's still a good player, but, there's a couple teams that could maybe get him. The Jets, the Colts, they have some quarterback issues. There's a lot of players that maybe could, there's a lot of teams that can maybe use them. Maybe the Dolphins, Falcons, the Browns, they always were picking up quarterbacks trying to get somebody like that. But, I'm a little bit surprised that, he, one, is going to the supplemental draft after getting his eligibility. That just is kind of like he needs to make a decision. He needs to be able to say if he's eligible or not, which I would think this would be a decision that Sorsby would make if he wasn't eligible, just in my personal opinion. But, again, I get why he's, declaring for the supplemental draft. It makes sense for it. But, again, Monday, the NCAA, they asked an appeals court for an expedited resolution in the case before the season kicks off on August 28th. That's going to be very difficult to do. Arguing in legal documents filed in Lubbock County District Court that Curry overstepped in granting Sorsby the temporary injunction. Oh, boy. That's going to be fun. First held in 1977, the NFL Supplemental Draft is an alternate summer draft that allows teams to bid future draft picks on players who, for various reasons, had their college eligibility impacted or did not enter the regular spring draft. The NFL holds a supplemental draft only when approved prospects are available, which hasn't happened since 2023, kind of like we mentioned. This is just an absolute mess, guys. I just wanted to tie this up because I wanted to see, like, hey, if Brendan Sorsby is in the NFL supplemental draft, can the NCAA still punish him? And yes, they can. They can still punish him. So basically, Sorsby can still be punished by the NFL for actions he committed in college, even if he enters the NFL supplemental draft. The National Football League reserves the authority to investigate past behaviors and uphold the integrity of its shield. NFL precedent for college actions, the prior rule, Terrell Pryor, the NFL previously ruled on college eligibility issues during the supplemental draft when it suspended Ohio State QB Terrell Pryor. Commissioner discretion, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell can issue suspensions to incoming players to ensure his league is not used as a sanctuary to dodge college penalties. The Sorsby situation, obviously he admitted to gambling. The penalty, these admissions triggered NCAA and ineligibility rules, and though he temporarily avoided suspension by securing a legal injunction, leaving college by applying for the supplemental draft, Sorsby, he bypasses his remaining college eligibility and legal battles with the NCAA. Potential NFL repercussions, league approval. The NFL must approve any player's entry into the supplemental draft and can weigh behavioral or legal investigations during that approval process. Active suspensions. If Goodell rules that Sorsby's past actions violate the NFL gambling policy, he could serve a professional suspension. So, there's still a lot up in the air with this. I feel like I don't think the NFL is going to punish him. I'd be very surprised if they did punish him because of the mental health thing. He was clinically diagnosed with a gambling disorder. I think that really does, make his case a lot stronger than people may realize. But at the same time, there's a lot of wild cards with this. Was this the right decision for Sorsby? Did he do this out of like, hey, I probably am not going to play in college? It seems like the NCAA is trying to speed up their appeal to get it done before August 28th, which is nuts. I don't know how they're going to do that, but again, we're going to be keep following this because there's going to be a lot more updates with this. But let me know in the comments what you guys think of this. For the sake of time, we're going to move on to more news stuff. But man, that Brendan Sorsby thing, that is no joke right there. That's going to be a battle of some giants. The battle of the Titans over there. You got the NCAA, NFL. Brendan Sorsby, Texas Tech. I mean, that's an absolute mess over there. And I wasn't really expecting Sorsby to declare for the NFL supplemental draft. I really thought he was going to stay at Texas Tech because when I got that news, it was like, before that, it was like, oh, the Big 12 suing, Texas Tech. And then it's like a couple hours later, it's like, oh, Brendan Sorsby, he's declaring for the supplemental draft. It's like, whoa, dude, what are we doing? Like, wow. Sorry, guys. That's just a big topic right now. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next headline. Chicago Bulls, they hired Thiago Splinter as the new head coach of the Chicago Bulls. Again, I thought this is a great hire. Great hire. I like Thiago Splinter, what he did with the Blazers. They were 7th seed in the West. They won a play-in game against the Suns on the road to get into the playoffs and play the Spurs. They won a game. They looked decent in that series. They looked like they had a bright future. Even with the Chauncey Billups stuff, he had to exit. Thiago Splinter had to come in and fill that head coaching role. I mean, there is nothing that is going to be harder for an NBA head coach than to do something like that. Come in, not even be expected to be the coach, lead them to the playoffs, exceed expectations. You found a franchise player in Denny Avia. You found some complementary pieces. You got some life into this Portland city, and you got the life of basketball in Portland back. So I think this is a great hire because I think this is a guy that could do the same thing with the Bulls. The Bulls have been pretty much irrelevant since Derrick Rose was on the roster and Jimmy Butler was on the roster. And now they have a chance to, rebuild, build some things back, get some things going in this draft. They have a high pick this draft. So, let's see what they can do with this year. And Thiago Splinter is a good option just because of the adversity that he did go through when he was with the Portland Trailblazers. I mean, 42-40 is a pretty good record. He became the first Blazers coach with a winning record in his debut season since 2001-2002. He turned Portland into a top 10 defense late in the year. They were 30-21 in their last 51 games. They led the NBA in second chance points and earned strong buy-in from the players. I mean, I think this is just a great hire. I love it. 41 years of age. I love it. I think this is a perfect replacement for Billy Donovan. And Thiago Splinter is a guy who's a champion. He's been on our championship team. Now he has playoff success as a coach. I think there's a lot of fun experience that he's going to bring to this Bulls team. Now the Bulls, they're not really all that great. I don't really like their roster, but he's got his work cut out for him. But if they can get a franchise player, somebody in this draft that can make an impact, maybe Splinter's got a future in Chicago and maybe can turn this thing around. And then the final headline, we've been talking about this too, Giannis Antetokounmpo trade talks. They're heating up. They're starting to heat up. According to ESPN's Brian Windhorst, trade discussions have ramped up significantly over the past week to 10 days. The league now widely believes a deal could happen, though Giannis still could sign with the Bucks. His preference is reportedly joining the Miami Heat. Let's go, baby! Talks between Miami and Milwaukee have gone for months, but the Bucks aren't thrilled with Miami's offers. Third and fourth teams are involved. The Boston Celtics have shown recent interest, but a deal would be complicated. Trading Jason Tatum trading Jalen Brown. And then I also just thought this would be interesting to maybe explore for the San Antonio Spurs. What if you traded De'Aaron Fox? Traded De'Aaron Fox for Giannis. Obviously, the Spurs saw what happened with De'Aaron Fox in the finals. He really underperformed, and I think there were talks about the Spurs maybe getting Giannis at one point. They were maybe rumored to be one of those teams, but I think maybe that's still an option. If De'Aaron Fox and the Spurs can somehow get him in a package and some draft picks and get that thing going, I mean, I think that'll be a fun thing. Now, due to the NBA salary matching rules, a trade will require the Spurs to send multiple players like Fox, Vassell, or Castle alongside draft picks to match Giannis' salary, which would be... that would hurt their depth a lot. So it'll be very interesting to see where Giannis goes. I mean, he may not go anywhere, but I want to see him in Miami, dude. I want to see him here. I do. I think the Heat can give up the players to get him. We may not have enough draft picks, but we have enough players. I would love to see if we can make this deal happen. Get Tyler Hero in there. Killian Ware, some other guys, some, draft picks that we may have, and get this deal done. We need to get Giannis. Pat Riley said, we're going after a star. We need a star. He's available. Make it happen. Giannis needs to be in a Heat jersey before the end of NBA free agency. Because if he's not, I'm going to be angry. Okay? I'm going to be angry. Now, let's go ahead and make sure to hit that subscribe button, guys. Like this video, comment what you guys thought about the news segment so far. Hit that notification bell so you get more videos like this. Now, let's get into UFC Freedom 250 at the White House. First of all, man, this was sick. This was a sick event. I mean, look, when Dana White and President Trump were literally doing their walkout from the Oval Office, dude, that was so dope. You got to see the whole landscape of the White House. That's behind the scenes that no American gets to really see that much because it's super difficult to go to the White House. I mean, I've only been once. It was like a field trip when I was in 8th grade. It was like a Washington, D.C. field trip. But it's such an historic place. And for the fact that the UFC was able to pull it off, tell the story of America, celebrate America's 250th birthday, and honestly, congrats to that, man. I mean, I appreciate, everybody who serves this country, the military, first responders, everybody who keeps us safe. I really appreciate you guys for this. It doesn't go unnoticed. You guys do a lot for us. This is literally, you guys are literally the reason why I'm sitting here on this microphone doing this. So I appreciate you guys, keeping us safe, letting us have, the ability to enjoy our passions and have fun in life and have a great time in this safe country. I would like to say one other thing as well. I know there's a lot of backlash going into the event. Like, there was a lawsuit going on that may have halted the event. I'm so glad it didn't halt the event. I'm so glad this event got to see itself. Like, I wanted to see the event follow through, and it did. And it's great for the sport of MMA. I mean, this was a great card. Just overall great card. First of all, every single fight on this card was a finish. Okay? Every single fight on this card was a finish. This is the first time every fight on a UFC card ended in a knockout. Now, I know this is a smaller card compared to most UFC events, but still, having a knockout happen in every single fight is impressive. And it was on the White House lawn. I mean, while there's never been a 100% rate of knockouts before, there have been 2 known previous instances of a card having a 100% rate of finishes. At UFC Fight Night 55 in 2014, all 11 results resulted in stoppages via either knockouts, technical knockouts, or submission. And the same could be said for all 10 fights at UFC Vegas 59 in 2022. So, the UFC White House card set a record with all 7 fights on the card ending by knockout, a first in UFC history. Never before has a UFC card seen all the fights end by knockout, but we had that happen at UFC 2 Freedom 250, baby. Like, that was so awesome to see. I mean, it really was. Like, that was impressive. That was impressive, man. Just to see, like, because even the card itself, I was like, not crazy excited with it, but having every single card end in every single fight end in a finish. That is where you are going to be able to get some people going, oh man, this might be the greatest card of all time. I mean, I think it might be. They were definitely the greatest fights of all time, I would say. I mean, listen, if you go from top to bottom in this thing, I mean, Diego Lopez, Steve Garcia, this was a fight that, I really didn't think Diego Lopez is going to struggle that much, but he did. He really wasn't doing that much for the majority of the fight, and then he just explodes out of nowhere late in that second round and knocks Steve Garcia out. And then after that, you go to Michael Chandler, and it's like, Ruffy, that's a good fight, but, not that. You got Kyle Dacus facing off Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel had a great finish. Okay, he was throwing some punches, takedowns, front kicks. I mean, this dude was looking dangerous in there. He's already a great wrestler, but now it seems like he's adding that, that striking to his game. And he's going to be a dangerous guy if he can keep doing stuff like that. And then Ruffy, of course, finishes Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler was running around for his life in this fight. I mean, I think Michael Chandler should retire. I mean, I love Michael Chandler, but he hasn't won a UFC fight since 2022 against Tony Ferguson. And Tony Ferguson, I'm sorry, but he was a washed-up Tony Ferguson when he fought this guy. I mean, listen, I think Ruffy's a future contender in that lightweight division, but I'm just saying Michael Chandler probably needs to hang it up. Love the guy. I love his heart. I love the entertainment he brings, but he looked like he was kind of in no man's land in that fight. Look, he was running around, looks like he couldn't really find his spots. It looked like it was time for him to step away. And same with Derek Lewis, man. I mean, I can't believe Derek Lewis was even on this card facing off against Hoggett. I mean, Josh Hoggett is a good fighter. He moves well, he kicks well, he can wrestle. I just don't think Derek Lewis can move well. I mean, it literally looked like Derek Lewis didn't even throw a punch back. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we doing here? Like, why is Derek Lewis not throwing punches back? Like, what? Like, okay, he's kind of slow, but like, man, you at least throw something. I mean, we get you're old, but throw a punch. Man, come on, man. Like, what was that? And then Sean O'Malley against this, I don't want to butcher this guy's name. So he fought a Canadian guy. I'm afraid to pronounce his name, but Sean O'Malley looked like he's back. I want to see him fight Peter Yan. He got that incredible finish in the second round. We saw Peter Yan and Sean O'Malley fight already. Sean O'Malley won split decision. It was a few years back. Now Peter Yan's the champion. I think that's the fight to make in the bantamweight division. Sean O'Malley, he's won 2 straight fights. He's been very impressive in those 2 fights. He's been very technical, very patient. he's an elite striker. I mean, this dude is one of the best strikers in the bantamweight division ever, and he has the craziest reach in bantamweight history. I mean, this dude, when he gets in the octagon with any bantamweight, it's like an unfair advantage when he's got that reach against you. And I like the way Sean fights. When he's patient and when he's switching stances and kicking and, throwing those overhand rights, I mean, beautiful overhand right, that straight left just hit him so well. Beautiful performance. Beautiful. I mean, absolutely beautiful. And then the co-main event, Cyril Gane, he defeated Alex Pereira by TKO with 127 left in the second round, Now, Cyril Gane, he made an impressive statement. First of all, he's one of the best heavyweight strikers and moving strikers I've ever seen. I mean, I think Cyril Gane's the best heavyweight striker I've ever seen. This dude has literally always fought at heavyweight in the UFC. Alex Pereira has fought at middleweight, light heavyweight, now heavyweight. Pereira weighed in 251 pounds to Cyril Gane's like 248. So Cyril was the smaller guy technically, but you saw early in the fight, Cyril Gane, he was able to get that jab off whenever he wanted to. He was kicking. He was moving really well. Alex, you could see he was a little flat-footed, kind of just standing in front of him, being a sitting duck. Now, that's what I kind of saw a lot in this fight. And I think Cyril Gane, for his ability to have some good head movement, block some of those high kicks that Alex was throwing, really made Alex think, like, oh, man, what am I going to do? I just don't think Alex has fought a guy at that kind of speed and that kind of size. So I think it threw him off a little bit. From what I saw, that's what I thought. Genuinely, that's what I thought. I thought it was throwing him off a little bit. But then again, I would say Cyril Gane is probably a lot better than people really give him credit for, because let's look at this. Cyril Gane, who's he really lost to in the UFC? I mean, he's lost to Francis Ngannou, who was the world heavyweight champion. He lost to John Jones, who's the greatest of all time. I mean, come on, guys. And then he had a doctor stoppage, the eye poke against Tom Aspinall. I mean, the only guys he's lost to, or I guess, fought that, where it was competitive fight or didn't, go his way, were all guys who were defending champions or just the greatest ever. You know what I mean? But he's fought Alex Pereira. I mean, he beat a guy who is considered a UFC Hall of Famer. That dude's a Hall of Famer. He's been a 2-weight class champion. No one's ever been a 3-weight class champion. I'd be very curious to see if Alex Pereira decides to stay at heavyweight. Because, look, I think sometimes when you're in new weight classes, it takes a second to get used to it. It does take a second to get used to it. But, I mean, the fact that Alex Pereira was up as long as he was in that fight before he got finished, he was 20 seconds unconscious just on his last legs trying to stay up. I'm like, how is this dude still up? I mean, I was like, how is he still going? And Cyril Gane, the precision on those punches, it was just incredible. I mean, that dude has power. Cyril Gane is a dangerous guy. And he said after the fight, he wants to fight for the title in Paris. Him and Tom Aspinall in Paris for the heavyweight title, that would be a fun fight. That would be a fun fight. I mean, talk about fireworks, dude. That would be a fun fight. But this was a very, interesting fight. Alex had a lot, to gain from this. But I feel like he didn't really have a lot to lose from this. Because if you lose to Cyril Gane, that's not a bad guy to lose to. It's just not. I just think the speed and the movement at heavyweight, at that size, really kind of, I mean, I think Alex obviously knew going in because, obviously guys watch film, but when you don't really know how it is until you get in there. And it's like, whoa, he's moving really good. He's feinting, he's jabbing, he's really light on his feet. He's on his toes, bouncing up and down. He's moving around the octagon like he's got that little boxing stance where he's got that, that front hand hanging out. He's going to jab, he's going to dip. This dude can fight. I'd like to see it again. I'd like to see if Alex can make some adjustments, but Alex, I think, would have done really well against Aspinall. I think that's a better matchup for him. I just think both of these guys are elite strikers, and I think it was just a matter of time. Once somebody catches someone, it's over. And if it wasn't for Gane blocking those kicks, those high kicks early, I think Alex probably could have won this fight. But again, these are two guys that are, huge. They punch hard. They're going for the finish. At some point, you knew there was going to be a knockout coming. And I didn't think Alex was going to lose this fight, but I'm honestly not surprised that Cyril looked as good as he does, because Cyril Gane is good. He's a really good fighter. Now he's a 2-time UFC interim champion. Very impressive win for Cyril Gane. Now the main event. Ilia Topuria and Justin Gaethje. I was so wrong about this fight. Listen, I'm not even going to sit here and say Ilia just lost. Ilia just fought dumb. He went in there in the first round, was just doing everything he could to get to Justin, to hit him. Didn't care if Justin hit him. Justin was jabbing his head off all night. Justin had that reach that was really an advantage in this fight. Every time Ilia tried walking forward, Justin would just put that jab out there so Ilia would walk right into it. And that's kind of what you saw. You saw Justin open up Ilia early in that fight. He had a cut on his head early in that fight in the first round. You got that going. Justin from the jump came out very, very smart. He wasn't trying to get hit. Ilia didn't give a shit. It really was insane. He was just going in there, getting hit. He was okay with getting punched. I've never seen anything like that. And Justin hits hard. And it seemed like even Ilia knew. I feel like Ilia's ego overtook this fight, because I feel like Ilia knew deep down that he was getting hurt. He was getting hurt. But he didn't want to admit that Justin was hurting him, so he kept coming forward. And man, that was a bad idea. That was a bad idea. Ilia is better when he is patient, he waits for his spots, and he explodes. He did not do that. He emptied the gas tank in the first 2 rounds, it felt like. Genuinely, that's what it felt like. By the time he got to round 3, dude was done. He was done. Like, he had cuts in his eyes. His eyes were swollen. He couldn't even see. Literally, legit, before the 4th round, the doctor came over, did his little check, he didn't even hesitate. He's like, no way, this dude can't fight. And then something happened, that the referee came in, was like, Ilia was saying he wanted to fight. He was good to go. They're asking, hey, you want to continue? He's like, okay, I'm continuing. He continues going into that 4th round, has a good 4th round, honestly. Good 4th round. Probably the only round he won in that fight. And then after that, they basically were like, in his corner, Ilia wants to keep going, but people in his corner were like, no, because Ilia got on that stool, looked like he had no idea where he was. He was very light on his feet. He looked a little bit dazed. I'm like, yeah, you could put him back in there, but Justin's just going to beat him to a pulp, and it's going to look worse. Listen, you still got to have a career after this, but I don't know. I wasn't expecting Ilia to fight like that. That emotional, that angry. He didn't look like the Ilia that we've been seeing the last couple fights. He just didn't. And Justin, he fought smart. Justin is a smart fighter. He's not an idiot. But he made history. He made history again. Going into this fight, he was a plus 400 underdog. Ilia was as high as a 6-1 favorite to win this fight. 6-1 favorite. And now, Justin Gaethje, he becomes the oldest undisputed lightweight champion in UFC history at 37 years and 212 days old. Let's hear what Justin Gaethje had to say about fighting Ilia Topuria.
He's very good. My liver still hurts. Those body shots were crazy. He was really, really fast, but when he didn't get the finish at the end of the 2nd round, I think it really took his spirit. And, again, I said it in the press conference leading up. I was like, he really backed himself into a corner saying he's going to be so dominant. And I said it. When we go to the 2nd round, you're going to be like, what the f-? When we go to the 3rd round, you're going to be like, what the f-? And, that's what I did tonight.
And also just a little bit more records about Justin Gaethje. He holds the most fight night bonuses of all time. He has the highest bonus per fight rate. Only 3-time champion at 155. Gaethje is the only man to won multiple titles in the lightweight division, claiming the BMF title and becoming a 2-time interim UFC lightweight champion. I mean, listen, I think it's great that Justin got the belt. I think it's great for the sport. This is a guy that's deserved it. He's fought some dudes. He's fought some Khabib. Khabib even said, that's the hardest. He hits the hardest out of anybody, which I'm a little bit surprised that Khabib didn't say Conor, but, again, he's not going to say Conor. Gaethje, where does Gaethje go from here? Do you give him the rematch with Ilia? Gaethje said, no, there shouldn't be a rematch. I made him quit on the stool, which is true. But I don't think that's, obviously that's true, but I don't think Ilia wanted that fight to stop. I think if Ilia had the final say in that, I think he would have kept fighting. Because Ilia was not going to go out like that. I think Ilia would have tried to go for the finish in the 5th and final round. I wanted to see a 5th and final round in that fight, but again, his eyes were so swollen. So swollen. And Dana White, he talked about Ilia Topuria's health after the fight.
Yeah, Ilia's in the hospital. He's busted up. I'm not a doctor, but his eye looked like he probably has broken orbital. I don't know that. That's not a fact, but I'm just assuming. And my plans for him are to go home and rest and recover and take his time. And tonight was a rough night for him.
Yeah, it was a rough night, and it doesn't really help when you got Islam Makhachev on Twitter going, there's levels to this game. That fight was supposed to happen between Ilia and Islam. We'll see. I mean, that fight may never happen. Honestly, it may never happen. It's kind of disappointing, but, again, I think Ilia just fought dumb. I think in a rematch, if you give Ilia a rematch, he wins. But, I'm a little bit disappointed. Ilia was so close to being 18-0, so close to being the next megastar in the UFC, and he just fell short. But it's great to see Justin Gaethje finally get that belt. Finally get that belt. I know this is a crazy, path for Justin Gaethje to finally become the official undisputed champ, but, it doesn't really matter how you do it. As long as you do it, he's been resilient. He's been in some crazy wars, man. It literally looked like Justin Gaethje wasn't even touched in this fight. He's got the greatest chin in MMA history. I've never seen a guy take so many punches and him still be standing. Ilia thought, he could finish Justin in the second round, and he was wrong. Justin is hard to finish. Only a few guys have done this to him. Max Holloway is one of those guys where he completely flatlined him, but that was at the final buzzer of the fight. You know what I mean? It just takes a lot. But speaking of Max Holloway, him and Conor McGregor are fighting in July, right? Justin Gaethje is the lightweight champion. Conor McGregor has fought at 155. They're fighting at 170, I believe, for this Max Holloway and Conor McGregor fight. The winner of that fight, in my opinion, I think should get a title shot against Justin Gaethje. My opinion, I think you can sell those either way. You can sell Conor versus Gaethje pretty easily, just the names alone. But you can sell Max and Justin as well, because they had a rematch for the BMF belt. I think you can make that fight happen. We'll see what Dana decides to do and what happens in that Conor fight. Or if Conor even wants to cut down to 155, I think that's an ultimate question that people have to ask themselves. Hey, I think out of all the titles right now, out of all the champions in the UFC, I think Justin is probably the better matchup for Conor because, one, he doesn't have to deal with wrestling, and two, you can just stand up and trade with him. I think Conor fighting Islam would be a bad idea. I think him fighting Justin would be a better idea, but I still think Justin could probably beat him. We just don't know how Conor's going to look, right? I think that's kind of the thing that we're trying to wait on and figure out. But it'll be interesting to kind of see because this card, there's a lot of things that got decided in this card. You saw a lot of new contenders emerge. You saw some different paths for different champions. You saw some different fights that could be possibilities to get made. It's going to be interesting, but congratulations again. The UFC They do such a great job putting on these once-in-a-lifetime events. I mean, they really do a great job. And I mean, Tyson Fury was there. I mean, a lot of celebrities are there. You know, they had the ellipse across the way that had like 85,000 people. I thought it was a great job. The only thing I really would say is I wish during the fight itself that you weren't seeing as much of the octagon and you were seeing the White House in the background a little bit more. That's the only thing I'd probably say that I thought missed out a little bit was like you could have had maybe a wider camera angle. Now, I know you want to have like, you know, that over the top, you know, type thing of the cage, but, you know, having that White House in the background while the guys are fighting, I thought that was the whole idea of it, and we just never saw the White House. You kind of barely saw like the bottom part of like the stairs or maybe the lights at the bottom of the porch, but other than that, you didn't get to see the whole thing. You only got to see it before the fights, you know, after the fights, you know, when they did those landscape drone shots, but other than that, like I think there could have been more opportunity to show the White House in the background of the octagon. Maybe you could have put a camera, you know, against the cage a little bit, but there's things you could have done a little bit differently. But again, you know, I'm not going to critique it too hard because this is a hard event to do. They built a stadium in the backyard of someone's home. Bottom line, like I don't care if this is the White House or the president, whatever. The UFC built a stadium in the back of somebody's backyard. They built it in someone's backyard. You know what I mean? Like an 8,000-seat stadium. I don't know. I'd like to see it again, but Dana White said probably never going to happen again. It's going to be the same thing as the Sphere. I wonder what's next when it comes to events like that. Like, what's the next step up from that? You know, because you go from Sphere to UFC White House. You know, how do you top that next? You know, I'm genuinely trying to think. I mean, you can't, I don't know. I mean, maybe a fight with Cyril Gane, Tom Aspinall below the Eiffel Tower. I mean, maybe that's next, but again, like, I don't know. You know, that's probably the next thing I could think of because Cyril Gane said he wanted to fight Tom in Paris. You could do it, you know, in front of the Eiffel Tower. You could have the Eiffel Tower in the background. You know, there's enough space there. You could do something with that. I don't know. Just an idea I'm throwing out there. The Roman Coliseum, I'd like to see that. You know, there's a couple other venues I'd like to see the UFC try to do. But again, you know, it's hard to do events like this. I get it. But I appreciate the UFC doing this because it's great. I love that it's not pay-per-view. I love you need a Paramount Plus subscription, and you can go back and rewatch the fights. You can go back and rewatch this film. I love it. Love it. Now let's move on to the next segment. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment your thoughts on the event, UFC White House, things like that. Hit the notification bell. Now, the New York Knicks, they win the 2026 NBA championship for the first time in 53 years, okay? This is a pretty, you know, I would say this is a pretty good finals for the NBA. Game 5 of the 2026 NBA Finals averaged 23.8 million viewers on ABC/ESPN. This made it the most watched NBA Finals Game 5 since the 1998 Chicago Bulls championship, marking a major resurgence in basketball viewership. Last year, you know, 2025, Thunder Pacers, 9.5 million. 23.8. I think that's the New York demographic coming in there. But I think the craziest part about this series for me, the Spurs, they held a commanding advantage for approximately 72% of the minutes played against New York, with massive double-digit leads in every matchup. So, yeah, the Spurs led 72% of this series and lost the series. That's the most mind-boggling stat I've ever seen in my life. It's not the 53-year drought being snapped. It's not the Knicks winning their first championships in this era. It is the Spurs leading 72% of this series and losing. Game 1, the Spurs blew a 14-point lead. Game 2, they blew a 12-point lead. Game 3, they won that game. Game 4, they built a 29-point lead. And they lost the largest road halftime lead in finals history. And then in Game 5, they led by as many as 16 and gave up a lead. Now, the last team to win 3 road games in a single NBA Finals series was the Toronto Raptors in 2019. The Raptors, they won all 3 of their away games at Oracle Arena. And other rare instances of teams winning at least 3 road games in the NBA Finals were the 2001 Los Angeles Lakers, the 1995 Houston Rockets, and the 1993 Chicago Bulls. I think the story of the series lies in that a little bit, and I want to touch on that just real quick. Again, this is just a once-in-a-lifetime run. We will never, ever, 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 ever see a run like this. The Knicks have the most comebacks in a single postseason down by 20 or more ever, with 3 this postseason. 3 points. 3 games they were down by 20 or more and they won. That is incredible. How do you keep winning these games? I don't understand why the Knicks are so comfortable in these positions. I don't. Jalen Brunson said, he's like, yeah, we don't start showing up until 30 minutes in. It's like, what? Hey, okay. Like, we get that. It's just insane. The Spurs should have won this series. They should have. They were the better team. They just couldn't close these games. That's the maturity of the Spurs right there. But the problem is, I think it's because Mitch Johnson ran some weird rotations, weird lineups in the fourth quarter. Couldn't take De'Aaron Fox out, who was horrible in this series. Dylan Harper was way better. You should have put Dylan Harper in the starting lineup, took De'Aaron Fox out. I get it. It's an ego thing. You're paying this dude so much money. You traded for him, everything. But you have to seriously consider making a change when it's not working. When it's not working. You can't blow a 29-point lead. You can't do that. That can never happen. Ever. And then game 5, 16-point lead. How do you blow that lead? How? How? At home. I don't get it. It's like, what? It's disappointing for the Spurs. It really is. It really is. I mean, New York rallied from double-digit deficits in all 4 of their series wins. How? The Knicks finished 16-3 this postseason. 84% winning percentage. That matched 2024 Boston for the second best since the format switched to the best of 7 series in all rounds beginning in 2003. The 2017 Golden State Warriors, they finished 16-1. The Lakers, they finished 15-1 in 2021 or 2001, And the Philadelphia 76ers, they finished 12-1 in 1983. 5 teams finished a postseason with 2 losses. The Knicks won 13 consecutive games at one point in this run as well. Second to only the Warriors in 15 in 2017, where they won 15 in a row. They did set records by winning 9 straight on the road and outscoring their opponents by 283 points. And the crazy part about this is, like, you go to game 4, the offensive rebound by OG Anunoby, the tip-in that's never going to be forgotten in New York's history. That's the shot of OG Anunoby's life. But when you look at these offensive rebounds, you would think, the differential between the offensive rebounds, you would think, the Knicks clearly out offensive rebounded the Spurs, and that just wasn't the case. The Spurs, they had 59 total offensive rebounds this series. The Knicks, they had 46 total. 46. So the Spurs actually, they were out rebounding the Knicks on the offensive side of the glass. Offensive rebounding, when it came to just offensive rebounding, 2.7 per game. They were out rebounding them for the entire series in the offensive rebound category by 13. But I think what made it different for the Knicks is that they had timely offensive rebounds. They had possessions where there was one in game 5 where they got an offensive rebound. They kicked it back out to Josh Hart. He misses the 3. They got the offensive rebound off that, Josh Hart misses the 3. They were moving around the perimeter. They get the offensive rebound. You get the offensive rebound off a free throw. I mean, there are just certain instances in that game 5 where it was like the Spurs could have totally won this game. This Dylan Harper missing that layup to make it a 90-90 ball game. I mean, you were all alone, basically. You have to hit those. You have to make those kind of shots. And there were just certain shots the Spurs weren't hitting. De'Aaron Fox missed the 3. I mean, the Spurs at the end of games in this series, for whatever reason, just couldn't close. I didn't understand, because they weren't doing that in the Thunder series. How do you beat, I don't understand how you beat the defending NBA champions and then you can't beat the New York Knicks. I mean, it genuinely makes no sense. And then it's like, Victor Wembanyama's attitude after the game is just so bad. He's like, I'll see the media, never. It's like, dude, handle this better, bro. You have to be better. He's got to get stronger. He's got to get stronger. His IQ has to be better. He has to have more go-to moves. It just seems like when Wemby's out on the court, he's just floating everywhere, doesn't really know what to do, but he's still somehow the best player on the floor at times. But in this series, he wasn't the best player on the floor for the most of the series. I mean, Jalen Brunson was the best player on the floor for most of the time. He's just plowing away at it. That's all he's doing. And I mean, Jalen Brunson in this series, I mean, I've never seen a performance like that. In that game 5, dude, 45 points, including 13 straight points in the fourth quarter. 13 straight. Do you understand how insane that is? And he also was named NBA Finals MVP. He's the only New York Knick in their history to score 40 in the NBA Finals. The last player to score 40 points in the NBA Finals before Jalen Brunson was Jalen Williams of the OKC Thunder last year when he hit 40. But again, you know, Jalen Brunson, he is a guy that just keeps setting these records. You know, he breaks Willis Reed's 1970 NBA Finals point record. He had 38, now he has 45. You know, Jalen Brunson, again, you know, he just makes life insanely difficult for these guys on, you know, every single end of the floor. Whether it's defense, whether it's offense, you know, he's never going to give up. He's never going to give in. He always thinks he's better than everybody else. He's determined to prove everybody wrong that, hey, I shouldn't have been a second-round pick, or, hey, I shouldn't have been this, I shouldn't have been that. You know, this is a guy that is so motivated. You know, he's got his dad by his side. He's winning a championship with his dad. Just think about how insane, how special that is. You're winning a title with Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, 2 guys you won a national title with in college. There's not a lot of guys that can say, hey, I've won a national title and also an NBA Finals championship in the same career. There's not a lot of guys that can say that. But I think for the Spurs, there's just a couple wild stats. You know, the Spurs became the first team in the play-by-play era to lead by 10-plus points in the first quarter of all 5 finals games. Crazy. And they didn't win the series. In Game 5, the Knicks started ice cold. They missed 16 of their first 18 shots and their first 11 two-point attempts. And the Spurs couldn't win this series. At one point in the second quarter, Wemby had more blocked shots than the Knicks had made field goals. And the Spurs still lost this series. First half of Game 5, only 79 combined points, the lowest in a finals game since Game 7 of the Lakers-Celtics in 2010. And then the Spurs combined first half field goal percentage, 31.8, the lowest in any finals first half in the play-by-play era. Again, it's just insane. The Spurs lost this series. The Knicks didn't win it. The Spurs lost it. The Spurs couldn't hold leads. They couldn't close games. They couldn't execute when they needed to. And the Knicks, they executed when they needed to. And now, Jalen Brunson, he has a ring. Before Luka Doncic, before Steve Nash, before Chris Paul, before John Stockton, before Allen Iverson. And now, let's see how he's feeling about being a champion and what it took to become one.
I don't think it took a toll on me mentally, maybe a little bit physically, obviously just because of the game and what they're trying to do. Mentally, I feel fresh. I feel like that's where I thrive. But you got to give them credit. That's a hell of a group. That's well-coached. The culture that they have is clearly evident. They have it. And so a lot of respect to them and what they brought to the table. I'm just happy we were able to find ways to win 4 games.
Now, let's go ahead and hear from Mike Brown, who was in his second NBA Finals as a head coach. And now he's the 24th coach the franchise has had since their last championship in 1973. Fast forward 53 years later, Mike Brown, he cannot stop praising Jalen Brunson.
I got to give his mom credit, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to give his dad credit too. His entire family. He understands what winning's about. He comes and he probably takes a pay cut that I wouldn't have taken. Every time they would have thrown that number in front of me, I would have said no, and I feel like I'm a good guy. So he set the bar before he even stepped on the floor. Every time it came to renegotiate a deal with him. So that set the standard. Now when you take into his play into account, it's off the charts, man. I love Pat. Pat's up there. I hope Pat doesn't kill me. Pat's bigger than me. We're both old and slow, but because he's got longer reach, he might be able to get me. But Jalen Brunson is him when it comes to New York basketball.
Yep.
He is freaking him, man.
Yep, he is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting, I guess, what a different head coach can do for a team, because you had Tom Thibodeau last year. You make it to the conference finals. Then it's like, oh, man, like, what are we going to do? Are we going to run this same team? And they did. And credit to them. A lot of guys got a championship ring that I'm actually happy they got a championship ring. Jalen Brunson, and then Karl-Anthony Towns. He is now a champion.
Seeing what we could be, and seeing also that what we could do when other people said we couldn't do that. And for two of the three trades, which I say 3 for 3, they went. 2 of the 3 trades up here right now that people said, what the hell are they doing? Obviously, they knew better than them, so shout out to them.
Yeah, so the 3 trades that he's talking about. So the OG Anunoby trade, December 2023, they sent RJ Barrett, the Knicks, Emmanuel Quickley, and a second-round pick to the Raptors. The Knicks got OG Anunoby and Malachi Flynn. This was I thought that was a good trade, in my opinion. I didn't think, whoa, that's ludicrous, whatever. I thought OG Anunoby was a great player, great defensive player when they got him. I was like, yeah, that's a good move. And then you get Mikal Bridges in that trade in 2024, summer of 2024. So the Knicks, they sent Bojan Bogdanovic, 5 first-round picks, and a second-round pick to the Brooklyn Nets. The Knicks, they get Mikal Bridges and Keedy Bates-Doyep. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but that was key to getting back, that Villanova core. You got Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges. Now you have Jalen Brunson on the same team. The draft picks were a question where it was did you give up too many draft picks to get Mikal Bridges? But the draft picks don't matter when you get the championship. Once you get the championship, those draft picks don't mean nothing. You go all in for a championship, that's all that matters. And then you do the Karl Anthony Towns trade, October of 2024. The Knicks, they traded Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, which I still don't like that they gave him up. I wish they kept that Villanova core together. And then a first-round pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they got Karl-Anthony Towns. I think that was the trade that really gave the Knicks life and gave Jalen Brunson another star by his side. Say, hey, you can go to bat with me. You can get rebounds. You can play defense. You can hit the 3. You can hit the outside shot. I honestly think that those 3 trades for the Knicks were pivotal. I mean, without those 3 trades, they wouldn't have won a championship. I don't think Julius Randle would have worked this long. I don't think they would have won a championship with that guy in New York. But again, I think there were just certain moves the Knicks had to make, and it wasn't flashy moves. I mean, they picked up Jalen Brunson, didn't even know if that was going to be even a good move, and now he's probably a certified 1A. I mean, he's a top 3 point guard in the NBA, I would say. Finals MVP, he's a champion. Not a lot of guys can say they're a champion. So, again, I think the Knicks just stuck with the process. They got guys that fit what they were trying to do. They didn't go flashy. Everybody was upset when they didn't get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. It's honestly probably better that they didn't get them, because that would have been a disaster. You saw how it went in Brooklyn. They barely even lasted together. This team lasted. And that's the key. And we'll see how long this continues. Does Jalen Brunson take another pay cut to keep winning, to keep building this roster? Because that's the thing that people forget about. When you've got a star player that takes a bunch of money It's super hard to get role players like Landry Shamet, Deuce McBride. It's hard to keep guys around like that because you can't pay them. That's why you see a lot of times, like the Lakers, for example, LeBron James, he's getting a lot of money. Luka's getting a lot of money. AR's getting a lot of money. And you don't have enough money to fill in holes on your roster that need to be filled. And that's what the Knicks are doing. There's not a lot of ego in that locker room, which I really like. And I think this team can break the streak. We haven't had a repeat champion. We've had a different champion every single year since 2019. I think the Knicks can go back to back. I do. I think they have the team. If they are consistent and they stay together and they get better and they figure out how to start games better and have a full 48 minutes, this team is going to be even better than they were last year. And I know the Eastern Conference is going to be strong and there's going to be a lot of teams trying to chase that mantle. But man, the Knicks, they got the roster. They've got the coach. There's nothing to change now. Nothing. This team has a pretty big window. I'd say their window is open for about 5 years. If not longer. If not longer. I mean, they're not old. They're pretty young. They're all in their prime. This is going to be a team that's not going away. As much as I hate to say it, this is not a Knicks team that is going to go away. They're going to be back next year. They're going to be in the finals. I don't think anybody in the East is really going to be able to mess with what this Knicks team has done. They have created a blueprint. The super team era is over. You don't need all these superstars on one team to win a championship. That's what the Knicks just proved. The Knicks just proved that you don't need to make superstar big-time splashes in the offseason for free agents to win. You just need to fill holes on your roster. You make sure you have the good team around a good star player, build around them properly, and you can win. Again, Jalen Brunson right now, too, he's the greatest New York Knick of all time. I mean, if you had to make your top 3 New York Knicks, number 1, it's Jalen Brunson. Number 2, I'd probably say Walt Frazier. And then number 3, Willis Reed. Probably 4, Patrick Ewing. 5, I honestly don't know. Probably Carmelo Anthony. But again, that's the list right there. He saved New York. He's the king of New York. You see him going on these tours. He's on Good Morning America. He's on all these shows. He's on USA Today. He's on all these shows. This dude's going to be one of the biggest stars ever just because he's in New York. And that championship they got, man, talk about that never being forgotten 53 years later. Mike Breen had one of the greatest calls ever. You can go ahead and cry in New York after 53 years. Yeah, dude, that dude, Mike Breen, seeing him watch the Knicks get a title because he's been the Knicks play-by-play voice for as long as I've been alive. And, to see him get an opportunity to call the NBA Finals, of course, he gets to call every single one. But the team he's been a fan of and the team he's been covering to win, it's great. And you saw Karl-Anthony Towns and Patrick Ewing hug. It seemed like Patrick Ewing won a title. I mean, he wasn't playing, but man, it really felt like that. He never got a ring, but he was celebrating like he got that ring. And he was on the team the last time before this finals where the Knicks were in the finals. And a lot of guys, including Jalen Brunson's dad, say Patrick Ewing is the greatest Knick they've ever seen. Now, I think that's hidden motivation there for Jalen Brunson to continue doing what he's doing. But what's next for Jalen Brunson? MVP? And then run it back? I'd like to see if he can do it. Congratulations to the New York Knicks. It's been long overdue. I hate that Stephen A. is now going on First Take saying, I don't have to worry about the Dallas Cowboys getting a championship before the New York Knicks, which is true. I know. You thought Dallas Cowboys weren't listening, Stephen A., but we are. By the way, we are. Okay? We're listening. We hear you making fun of our team now. Okay? I get it. We haven't won. You guys won more recently than we did. I get it. Cowboys, they're winning the Super Bowl this year, though. We're going to win the Super Bowl this year, though. That's all I got to say. Now let's go ahead and move on to Team USA. We beat Paraguay. We scored 4 goals, baby. 4. 4-1 is the final against Paraguay. Okay. This was a great game to watch. I mean, I went to a watch party for this one. The crowd was rocking. When we scored a goal, it was like, the first goal when the Paraguayan guy kicks it in for us, I was like, what's going on here? Why is he scoring for us? Pulisic tried to pass it in the middle, and the Paraguayan guy kicks it in. I'm like, yeah, dude, let's go. Yeah, that's what we needed. But again, this is the most goals ever scored by the United States men's national team in a single FIFA Men's World Cup match. And Team USA's head coach, he talked about what it was like to get a win.
That is only the start. It's still 2 games to play. We need to enjoy about that start of the tournament. But knowing that we need to keep going and trying to improve and try to do better in the next game, because it's going to be all the games very competitive. But, of course, so happy.
Folarin Balogun, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, dude, but he had 2 goals against Paraguay, the second most goals in a World Cup game in U.S. history, behind Bert Puntananad. Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that name. Since 1930. Again, I'm just happy the U.S. got that 3rd point, because Paraguay, they scored that stupid goal. They were down 3-1. I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, we're only going to get 2 points out of this game, aren't we? And the U.S., we go up 4-1. We get that 3rd point. I'm like, thank you. That's all we needed. That's it. But hey, listen, I can say the U.S. has a chance to go to the quarterfinals. We do. I liked what I saw. Honestly, we probably could have scored more, but we had some miscues. We probably could have scored 5 or 6 goals here. I mean, let's keep it a buck. We were moving the ball well. We were passing. We were getting out in front. We were getting numbers, 2-on-1s. A lot of times, I liked what we were doing. We have a lot of speed. I like our strikers a lot. I think we have a lot of potential in this tournament to make some noise. I do. And I'm very proud of our team. Very proud. We're not a soccer country, but again, we're coming out here and we're making a statement. We made a statement. That's what I wanted us to do. I said going into this World Cup that, hey, we probably need to score. Our defense is good, but we probably need to score. And we scored. We scored 4 goals. I'm excited to see what we do against Australia this week. We'll kind of break down that matchup in the next episode later this week. But that's going to go ahead and do it, man, for this episode of The Take with your host, Jackson Burlison. Of course, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment your thoughts on this episode as well. Hit the notification bell so you do not miss out on any more takes with Jackson Burlison. But I will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.
Talk to me, baby. Talk to me nice. I'm from another world, baby, yeah. Broadway paradise. They think I'm way too cold, cause I put my